And welcome to our Studio Suite webinar. I am Joel Stoner. I am the founder CEO of Alter Media, and today we're going to talk about reporting. And just a quick note, I've been traveling literally around the world, and I'm sick, so a little under the weather, I should say. So I'm not quite as prepared as I like to be, just like my last webinar. So please bear with me. A little bit of housekeeping first. This is going to be about 60 to 90 minutes. And depending on our length, we may or may not take a 5-minute break about halfway through. I'm recording this, and it'll eventually get posted to our site. We've had some time problems just getting time to edit some of the previous webinars to get them posted. But we will get there eventually. And we are doing them most Thursdays, and there's a schedule up on our site to find out what's coming up. Next week, I'm not sure if we are going to have one because I'm going to be on the road again, and we've got to twist Byron's arm to see if he'll do one. Type any questions that you have as they come up, and I'll either try to answer them in line if I can, or at the end. And this is not intended to be a sales demo. It is more just about reporting and what we can do with that. So I'm assuming that you've got FileMaker and StudioSuite installed, either the trial or purchased version. That you've got it registered, you're logged in, and you've done a basic setup of the 7 things you must do, which is setting up your company, your contacts, your StudioSuite users, your rooms, your equipment, your virgin or blank media inventory, and your services, the things that you do. And then in this case, actually, it's also really important that you get your rates set up. And the reason for that, even if you're not charging for your service, is that the rates that you have for each resource is where you define the unit that is going to be counted for your reporting. So are we counting days, or are we counting hours or frames or DVDs or something like that? So any particular resource, let's say a room, you might sell it by the day, you might sell it by the hour, things like that. So it's important to have the rates properly set up for the things that you want to do your reporting on. Let's see, what's our next slide here. And I think most of you have seen this before, but I'm going to do it again because it's important to talk about the different perspectives that we're going to do this reporting on, and where the data that we're looking at is going to come from. So I'm just going to try to blast through our module structure again for you. It starts at the top with the production, which equates to like a season of a TV show or a feature film or a large multi-phase project. Of course, you can have a bunch of productions, and maybe you want to do some reporting from the perspective of productions. How many did we do? How much did we profit or lose on each one, and so forth. And then inside each production, we've got a project or more projects, one or more projects, which would equate to an episode of a TV show, a large aspect of a film, like a pre-production, shooting, editing, post-production, delivery, mixing, those kinds of things. Or a project could be for a particular reel of film, or it could just be a one-off job. And of course, each production can have one or more projects, and they can stand by themselves. So maybe you're going to want to do reporting based on projects. How many did we do? How much are we losing or making per project, and so forth. And I think you all know that within a project, we can have one or more events. An event is basically a project line item that consists of some of your resources, your rooms, your equipment, contacts, your services, your media, and inventory and materials. And again, this is where the importance of the rates come into play, because when we're selling a room or equipment or person or a service? Are we counting by the hour, by the day? Maybe it's just a one-time thing for our creative fees is a flat rate, that kind of thing. So we just need to define really what the unit is that we're going to be measuring for our reporting. And I think you also know that when we apply those resources at those rates with a date and a time, that's what we call an event or a project line item. Those are what appear on the calendar. And excuse, there's an extra bit of information here on this slide, that the calendar will appear on the phone, which is kind of reporting, but not literally. And those things also get sent out to invoices. And a quick note here: we've got reporting from productions, from projects, from events, and from invoices. Why do we do it from so many places? That's because suppose on a large project you might have 100 or 500 line items that where you're managing all the different resources, dates, times, quantities, prices, and so forth, expenses. But what your client wants to see is an invoice with a single line item, which is the whole project. Everything is single line item. So the in that case, the invoice doesn't really carry much detail to report on. So you would need to get the reporting from the middle, which is the events, rather than the end, which might not have the detail or resolution that you need. So a couple more layers to this. Obviously, the invoices can go out to QuickBooks, which has their own set of reporting, obviously based on just what's at the invoice level, so maybe not the full resolution that you're looking for. We also have some reporting over in the library, if you look at the bottom left there, and also some in tasks, really just lists of information. And all that stuff ties back to the client record in the contacts module. And so we can not so much report from the contacts module, but at least see a perspective from the client of the various productions and projects and events and invoices and media assets and so forth that have been put together for that client. So let's get out of there and go into Studio Suite. Don't forget to ask any questions as we're going along. So before we get into extreme detail about project reporting and event reporting and invoice reporting, which I think is most of what you're looking for, I want to cover a couple basic things. So I'm going to go into contacts first, just as a basic, and to confirm that every module has a reports tab. In Studio Suite 9, this was called the print menu. Now we call it reports because it's got reports on it. And most of them will have a company selector at the top, which allows you to pick which company you're going to pose as while you're printing this report. So that's a good thing to know. And then you're always going to see buttons that allow you to pick which kind of report that you want. Something that we added in Studio Suite 10 was the audit log. So this is not necessarily a printable type of report, but from here you'll be able to see all the changes that have been made. So it's a kind of a report for this record, and every change that we make gets documented here. Let's see. So that's reports from the contacts module. Maybe I'll mention a couple other things. When we're printing out, say, a list of things in your print setup, it's going to give you a preview of it first. Then we hit continue. And one of the most important things is to make sure we understand what we're going to be printing. Sometimes you want to print a single record, which would be only the one that you're on. But when we're doing reporting, typically we're going to do the records being browsed, which is whatever your current found set is. And that found set may consist of some query that you did as far as a date range or a particular category of events or type of customer or something like that. In the contacts module, since we're here, I'll just mention that when you're printing out a list, it's going to print your current found set. So if you wanted to print out a list of somebody in a particular group, maybe I'm going to go to my list tab to my group management sub-tab, excuse me, and I want to find everybody I'm going to send out my summer mailer to. I'm going to find that group. Oop, here's where the lack of preparation is coming into play. Let me find a particular group. Promo package, maybe I have some there. So I just found 18 people that I want to send my promo package to, and then I could go to reports and I could print out maybe mailing labels for those people. And so I'm going to print that out, and I'm expecting that to be a list of labels, but it's not. So hopefully in your case that would be. And a little note here says you may need to tweak the layouts to match your specific printer type. So when we're doing something that are like labels, they have a fairly precise layout. So what I just did there is I went into layout mode. You can do that a couple different ways. I'm going to hit edit layout is one way. I can also go down to browse, select layout from here, and I can also from the view menu at the top select layout mode or command L. So there's actually 4 ways to get into layout mode. Once we're there, if you need to edit any of these printouts, if you go to Pro and then Print, that's going to bring you to all of the available printouts that are there for that. Looking for mine, actually. Where are they? Just noticing that there don't seem to be any of those. All right, I'm not going to worry about that right now. So exit back to here. But that's how you would get into the appropriate layout. So what else? Let's go to projects. So here are things that we might want to print on. Here's a project called Jeff. And sometimes we just need to print out a report for this project. And there's a couple options right from the screen. Print this is going to print kind of like a work order style printout where we can either show the prices if it's the client or not show the prices if we're giving this to a staff member. And so this is, essentially for this project called Jeff. We're calling this a call sheet in this case. But here's all the resources, the dates, the times, the quantities. And of course, there's the other one that will show prices. Not going to bother with that. In Studio Suite 10, I'm going to, let me find a project that's got a range of dates on it. So I'm going to go sort this by date. So we can see we've got several different dates going on here. And if I hit this button right here, it's going to give us the option whether we want to sort this by resource or by project. So I'm going to do resource in this case. And this is going to be more of a calendar style report where I can see here's everything that's happening on Sunday the 17th. And the next page is Saturday the 23rd. And actually, this is a good little tip here. I've learned that a lot of people will come to see this and they're like, how do I, this is not my full report. Where's the rest of it? Sometimes you do need to flip the page right there just to get to the next page. So this is a new report in 10 that allows you to get kind of a day at a time glance at a particular project. In this case, it just happens to be that the first page is a single day, the second page is another single day. But if they're short enough, if they're lesser events, you'll see multiple days on one page if that works. So that's a day at a time report from projects. That same style of report also exists in the calendar module. So go over to a particular one. Here's this particular week, let's say, and if I hit this kind of stair-stepped report and I want to do it by resource, still will sort it by day. So there's Monday, Tuesday, and so on. Whereas Wednesday and Thursday, we can see in that case we are getting 2 days on there. And again, all these are customizable if you want to. I'm going to go back into projects again. And from here, let's go to the reports tab. So again, I'm going to pick my menu. And there's a new option in 10. When we're printing out those reports that I just did, we have the option to include or exclude resource people's phone numbers and emails. So if you're printing out a cameraman or an editor, an engineer, sometimes you do want their phone number to appear, and sometimes you don't. So this is your global. This is a setting for this project, but there is a global setting for this in your main menu setup area. Excuse me. So these reports over on the right side are for the setup info tab. They're going to basically give you reports from there. These buttons on the left side are corresponding to this grid of buttons right here. So if we were to do the actual expense and hit the print this button on this view, that is essentially going to be the same report as the expense actual on this one. A lot of the report pages have a button to find only this record because sometimes you're printing out a form for a particular record. Say we're doing the audio setup for the project called Slate 3. Notice I've got 622 records right now. If I had find only this record, we only have one record now. So when I print out the audio setup, for example, it's not going to print out 622 pages, which would be traumatic for your poor printer. So one of the things to understand about projects, when we look at all these line items, these are what we call events. Most of you know that. So if I go to my reports tab within projects, there's another big button here. other report options from events. So I'm going to click on that. And that brings me into the events module. And let's, of course, this is normally called events, but I happened to just yesterday experiment with changing the name of it to be called project line items. Actually, there's a little side note here. I'm going to put it back and show you how to do it. So from this window menu, I'm going to go to show window, and I'm going to pick a particular window. This one. Okay, so here's resources. And if I look for something called project line items, it's going to go find that. So here's my module name events. And the other day I wanted to rename it project line items, but for the sake of this, I'm going to put it back to events. And then when we make any changes over in this resource file, we hit this little check mark to refresh the values everywhere. That takes a second or two to do, depending on computer speed. So now I'm back at the events, and it actually has the original name. So that's not what the webinar was on, but now you have a hint as to how to go about changing module names and field labels and things like that. So here we are in events, which corresponds to project line items. And as I showed you in contacts, we have the print options tab and also the audit log, which is going to show us every change that was made to this record. I can print what the letterhead's going to be. And over here, I've got a bunch of different options, so quite a bit more than in Studio Suite 9. So the first one is session reports. And this is the one that equates to that print this button when I go back to projects. So if I go back to projects and I do the print this, that equates to the event reports called session reports. And we can name them here. So if I wanted to call it work order, next time I print that out from projects, it's going to be called work order instead of call sheet that I had temporarily. And this confuses some people, so I'm just going to walk through these options. In some facilities, they consider a work order to be one thing, one line item. So this is called one event per sheet, and it'll do just a single item, which is the record that we're on right now, which is this one right here. Or we have the option to do all of today's sessions, which is essentially events, one per sheet, or we could do all of tomorrow's, or we could do everything on a certain date. So let's say today's Thursday, but I want to do all of the reports for tomorrow on a single sheet. So I would click this button right here. In my opinion, these aren't that useful unless that's particular your workflow. I think what's more useful is this many events per sheet, which equates to all sessions or events on this project on the same day. Or we could do all of today's sessions across multiple projects, or all of tomorrow's sessions. So let's see if we have any tomorrow. I'm not sure if we do. Here we go. So I've got one work order for tomorrow. It's the project called Room Edit 61-440, and so on. So I continue. I'll cancel back to there. But let's say today's Friday, and I want to set stuff up for Monday, the 4th. So I can do on a particular date. Maybe I want to print out all of the things for Monday, and here we go. So it looks like it's that same project also is occurring on the 4th. So I'll hit cancel on that. The ones in this row contain prices. So all of these ones at the top do not have any pricing information. The one at the bottom does. So it's basically the same option. Many events per project on all of today's sessions or all of tomorrow's, or everything on a given date. Those are all work order style printouts. So let's get into some more business intelligence type stuff. So if I go to item list sums, we have a couple options here. Let's say I would like all of my resources to be used 8 hours per day on average. This is going to give me the option to view a percentage of the available time that I've got for those. How much am I actually using? And then I can narrow down the items that I've got. And so I can pick by category. If I want to just look at my rooms, I could do that. If I want to pick a singular room, I could do that. Let's say stage 1. Or if I leave it empty, it's going to show me all of my rooms. or if I select all, it's going to show me everything. The more items you have, the longer it's going to take. Now I think we've got an option here to do multiple. So let me look at my keyboard here. Rooms, equipment. Let's see, is it shift? Dubs. There we go. So if you hold down shift, you can get a multi-category report. So I'm going to go back to all for a second. Go back to rooms, and then I'm going to get equipment. Sorry about that. And then I'm going to, maybe I just want to get people. So I'm holding down shift, and this is allowing me to get rooms, people, and equipment in my report. Then I can specify date range. Got a drop down menu, last month, this month, Q1, Q2, whatever. So even if I pick last month of 2013, pick a year, that's January, but maybe I also want to see up until current in February, which happens to be all of this month. So you can, get a quick range, or you can be more precise by picking your own start date and time, and we can give it a report name for a webinar for this particular printout. So this is going to show me for the month of January through February, my rooms, people, and equipment, and it's going to be called that based on 8 hours a day. Let's see what we get. So this is breaking down each resource that we selected, starting with a bunch of equipment, and per item, it's showing us it did 79.45 hours. Let me see if I can do a zoom in here. So I can see for post-production on this AKG, 79.45 hours of post-production, 8 hours of production, and 2 hours of TV. Up at the top, we can see the number of hours, the number of sessions that we've got, what the average length of them is. Maybe the zoom out. Maybe the zoom is not effective because I can't cursor. So there we go. The number of sessions, the average length. And if I go into this AKG, I can see 88.9% was post-production, 8.9% was production, 2.2 TV. Of the available time that was used, that 8 hours per day, how much did we actually use? And of the total hours within this report, what percentage of it? So I can see that post-production was 1.3% of all hours used in that time. We can see our build amount and our expense amount and our profit loss. So, and notice it's also got the summary report for webinar, which is the name that we gave this. If we scroll all the way to the end, we'll see some nice big numbers there and some room information at the bottom. I can see Studio C was used for lighting, multimedia production, and the infamous Why Me. So I continue on that. That's a nice report. I think it can really break down per resource the kinds of work you're doing, the profit you're having within that, and so forth. The next report down here is items. And I'm going to use the same group of categories. I'll use the same date range just so we can see how things are looking. Notice we can sort this a number of different ways. By day, maybe you want to look sequentially by day. What did we do? Let's see what this report looks like. I'm going to use the same name, and I'll do, we've got a couple options here. I'm looking at the profit loss difference or the budget to actual charge difference. So this is the profit loss. So my expense versus my charge on all of these things. And within each item, it is sorting by day. So we could see how each of our resources was used sequentially throughout the course of the month, what the expense was for each, what the charge, the profit loss, and also the total hours. And this is where that rate definition that I told you about comes into play. So let's look at this last item here for Jeff. Well, not last on the page, but last for this one. We can see that the hours was 10 hours and 30 minutes, but the quantity is dependent on the rate. So the rate looks like this is a billing by the day. this particular one. So we can see that the quantity is 103, but really that's a mixture of potentially hours and days and units and things like that. So it's not a really valuable number unless you're using a consistent rate for that resource. And note the little note at the bottom, these calculations are based on event data in the events module and not from the invoices module. Therefore, actual build amounts may differ. And that's intentional. Some people think, well, that's a mistake, but it's not. It's there very intentionally. So you can, from this report, get an exact information about what your expense was, your charge, your potential profit loss, which of course is governed by how much you're actually going to invoice for these things. So I'll hit OK. Or continue, I should say. And let's look at the next thing. So let's say we've got a whole ton of things. Oh, actually, let me go back to this previous one. And this time I wanted to summarize by project. Same report. So this is the same thing. The big number there is the production number. Actually, it's the project name, sorry. And then the production. The project number, then project name. We can scroll through here and see, how did we do on the project called example project? Well, we used the Red expensive camera for a bit, Allen Assistant for a bit, Alex Baller for a bit, and Avid 2 for a bit, total expense like that. So it's just good to think about the different perspectives that we want to view things at. This one I'm doing a budget to actual. And I don't think I've got a lot of budget to actual data in my system here. But we can see for these resources, I didn't budget anything. Here's the actual. Here's the difference between them. Let me scroll around to see if I can find some data in there. There we go. So there's some. So we can see that for Alex in this case, we budgeted a bunch of things and we didn't have any actual. Now, sometimes you're going to see what we're seeing right here. And this looks like a mistake, but it's actually just poor data management on my part as the creator of Studio Suite, showing you in a webinar how not to do this. So I budgeted 8.5 hours at this rate. The actual was 4.5 at 50. And it seems like, well, there should be a big difference there. And there's not in this case because you can see it's called bad project. There wasn't a one-to-one link between the budget and the actual. So in Studio Suite 10, you have budget items, you have actual items. They may or may not necessarily be the same items. So just keep in mind that if you're looking at some of these reports, look at the project first before you go for certain that your budget to actual report is correct, because we need to make sure they're correct in the project, which I guess is a relevant topic as well. The report is only as good as the data you put into it, so make sure you've got good data. I think this is the first time we're seeing this export button. So what if we want to export some of this and get it out to Excel? Well, we can. So I'm going to hit export, and when you do that, it's going to give you a preview first, just so you can get a confirmation of what data it is that you're exporting before you export it. So I'm going to hit continue. So export records to file type. Probably want to go down to XLSX. I'm going to say automatically open file, and I'll go ahead and put it in my demo files there. I usually leave these Excel options empty. And it's going to come up with some what we think are default fields that you might need for that. And we can also specify whether we want to subtotal them by project name, item category, or item name, so forth. And these are all the fields that exist. So if we wanted to bring out maybe one more field, we could just by double clicking on it. Now I see it over here. And we can drag the export order like this as well. So this is exporting data from Studio Suite. Little bonus for today's webinar. So if you were wanting to always have, for example, the particular field here, let's say the sum quantity, I'll always want to have those on my printout. What we'd want to do in that case is go into the script tool and update the script a little bit. That's a little bit more of an advanced technique that we would probably want to help you with. But I just want you to know that's an option. If you want to be able to add or delete fields from your exports, you can certainly do that. So I'm going to go ahead and hit my export here. And here it's just opened it up for me in Excel. So here's all the data that I just wanted to report on. And we can see that all the fields are there. Once we've got it in Excel, we can slice and dice it however we want, set up some graphs if we want to, and things like that. So close that out. So that's the export button on most of your report tabs if it's relevant. If I should also mention, the data that you're looking at doesn't have an export button. That doesn't mean you can't export. If we go down to the file menu, I can always go export records here. It's going to export whatever your current found set is. So I've got 686 out of 4,900 event records. If I want to export those, I just go down to export, give it a name called my export, and I'm going to get essentially the same thing, same dialog that I had before. And it's going to always show me whatever my fields were on my last export. You'll recall that I added these. And I could go ahead and add some more if I want. Here's, I don't know, I shouldn't get too far into exports, but the fields that it's showing me are on the left side are only the ones on the layout that I was going to print from. If I need to grab fields that weren't on that layout, I would go current table rather than current layout here. So current table, and let's say I wanted to get action on this export. So I'll just double click on that. It shows there, but I want it positioned here on my export. So then I hit export and out it goes. I'm not going to actually do it. I'll hit cancel. So that's exporting. Invoice status. Maybe I want to find out all of the projects that I've got that are not yet invoiced. And actually, I should say not so much projects that aren't invoiced, but project line items that aren't invoiced. In this case, I'm going to open up my category to all categories. I'll keep the same date range, and I just hit print. Oh, I guess there aren't any there. I must have invoiced everything. So let's try things that have been invoiced, if I can. Cancel there. Try uninvoiced. So invoiced, sorry. So here's everything that I have invoiced in that range. That didn't seem quite right. I want to try that again. Show me everything uninvoiced last month. Actually, I'm going to open up the date range bigger. Let's go last. That's for the whole year. For last year, I'm going to go to. So what I'm showing here is that you can edit these without that little pop-up calendar, in case you want to do that as well. Wow, I guess I've been very good about finding invoicing all of my demos. So I guess I don't have an uninvoiced data there. So that's a useful tool, though, to be able to find those kinds of things. Just looking at questions here. So also by action. So if I want to find all of my events that include editing, for example. Let's try editing audio. I'll leave the range again. See if anything is in there. There we go. So here I've done an action summary. So in projects, for each line item, you can specify what the action is. So here's a good way to find out how much we've spent on the action of editing audio, how much we've earned on it, and our profit loss for that type of work. Good to know. And I'm just going to go back and show you where that's coming from. That is coming from this field right here. So it's important to know that if you don't fill out this field, you're not going to get that data. So I think I've observed that a lot of our users don't fill these out. So obviously you're going to lose some data resolution. And speaking of this field, I can see that Paul Santoro is on our webinar today. He contributed a great idea that I'm going to show you about in rates. So I'm going to jump over to rates, to the rates module, and I'm going to go look at the detail of a particular rate. And we can see that now within the rates module, we can set up a default action. So we can say that, let me find something appropriate here. I have a service called offline edit. That's the name of the item that I'm booking. And I should say that the action for that is editing offline. That way, whenever I book the item called offline edit, the action will come in by default as edit offline. Do people still do offline editing? And here, well, that's some wacky stuff. And of course, you can change those as they're used. Maybe the action for this mic would be recording, something like that. Let's say tracking a band. Do people still track bands? Anyway, so now when I book this piece of equipment, it's going to automatically come in with this action as long as I'm using this rate as the default rate for that item. Thanks, Paul, for that. We're going to go back to the events module, back to the reports tab, and look at a few more of these. We were on action before. Next is employee. So maybe you want to find all of the paid, how much did we spend on all of our employees last year? So I'm just going to go to people, 2012. Oh, maybe that's why I wasn't getting those things before. Employee hours. Let's try unpaid for last year. So here's all of my unpaid reports for employee line items for last year. I'm going to hit continue. Paid date is, let's say, today, 2/28/13 to 28/13. Okay. So now we're going to get a, it's going to mark them all as paid, which is why it's taking a minute. And then we'll get a nice report from that we can print out and have evidence that we did, in fact, pay those folks. Someone asked while that's turning, I'll answer a question here. Events that appear with blue italics, what does that represent? So that was in the projects module. We were looking at a bunch of project line items, somewhere in blue and italic. That means that they are essentially child items to a parent item. So we've set up a hierarchy, and that's indicating that that is a child item to a parent item. And this is kind of relevant. The next question asked was, is it practical to use Studio Suite to clock in, clock out employees? I have to say no, unfortunately. We do have an employee scheduling module that is intended to keep track of when people are scheduled to work and when they're going to work, when they actually did work. But we haven't got a great way to do clock in, clock out yet. We've looked at those badges that you can swipe, or the magnetic ones that you can, or RFID ones that you can put up. We haven't heard back from enough customers to say we want it to be this way or that way, so we haven't finalized that yet. So here's our employee hours for each person. I can see that Alex worked on this project, the Jason project, a few good resources project, Jen's movie project. Within each one, what were his hours? The regular hours, the overtime hours, the total, and the fact that they're now all paid. So how much did we spend last year? So big it doesn't fit. Hopefully you're not paying your employees that much. So let's continue, and we'll cancel that printout. Next one is clients. I'd like to see how much I paid ABC Television, or how much work ABC Television did with us last year. I'm going to go ahead and print that. So I think you get the idea. Maybe I don't need to go into such detail on this. Oh, we only had one project for ABC Television last year, and that was in October. And here's the total that we spent on that. We charged for that. I could narrow that down to certain categories if I needed to, but I don't. So we can do by productions. Let's pick a different production. Curb Your Excitement. You get the idea. We could also export this. There's a difference report, which is a little bit different than the one we saw under the items. I'm not going to compare them both right now, but maybe just look at the two of them to see if there's one or the other that you like better. Another one is by project type. So maybe I want to look at all my film projects, all my TV projects, all my recording projects, and so forth. One in particular I would like to mention is operator. There's a new field now. If I go back to a project, excuse me, I can assign an operator to a project, which kind of is. Notice on this, I've got a camera and I've got some equipment in there. Um, and I just want to say that I've got a particular operator uh, that's doing this. And maybe I'm not booking him specifically. Maybe he's a 9 to 5 employee and I don't need to schedule him. I just know he's one of the guys on my crew that's going to do it. So Dana's going to do it. Um, this only affects all future items that are added to this project. If I click this operator button here, it's going to ask me if I want to apply Dana to all of these visible items. And remember, I can always use the category, item, or date range filters or the hide buttons to apply anything to my visible events. So I'm going to hit yes, go ahead and do that. So now if I do a operator report for Dana White, I should get that particular one in there. So let's go back to our events module again. Reports, operator. I'm going to pick a particular one called Dana White. And I don't remember if that one was this year or last year, so I'm just going to make it say 13 here. Print. So there's our Dana White operator for all the work that has been done by Dana by operator. So that's a nice new kind of way to slice and dice the events that you've got. And again, we could export that. And I'll also mention this. So this is a scripted export that will requery based on these parameters. But I could also, because I know I've got those 5 found records at this point, I could also just do export records like I did a minute ago. So those are the event reports that we've got available. Since it was on our little spreadsheet, on my little presentation map a minute ago, I want to point out that we could also print out a list of tasks. So in my system right here, I've only got 4 tasks created. So I can hit print this, and this will basically print me out a list of them that I can hand off to somebody. And I could definitely do a search for all tasks for a certain person. In this case, I don't have any more than one report for these people, so it wouldn't be useful. But you could do a find for Joel, for example. Oh, I need the ID. Um, well, you get the idea. You could go to Joel's record in contacts, find all his reports, come here and print them all out. Or I could just go find all my tasks. Oh, there, Joel is on these two tasks, so I can hit print this, or go to the reports and go task list. It's going to get me the same thing. So here's all the tasks that Joel is involved with. Right there, that says Byron, but Joel's also there as well. So that's reporting from tasks. We did contacts. Events. We did web requests. We didn't do web requests. I think at this point, let me go into invoices. We're coming up on actually we're a little bit past the halfway mark, but if it's okay with you all, I think I'm just going to proceed because I think we're getting near the end of our story here with reports. So now I'm in invoices, and I said it before. I'll say it again. Invoices does not necessarily always have the same data that projects and events do, because if I go back to a project, I'm going to find one that's got a bunch of stuff on it. Okay, so here is a project. I'm going to filter this to only show stuff on February 17th. There's only items now on February 17th. I'm going to select all for invoice those selected items. So notice here that the only items that are getting invoiced are the ones that are checked, which means that um, those are the ones that have rates. So it's only selecting those. Um, I can, of course, override something. So if I want to put in $50 for this item here, and 20 for this. So here I've added a charge to this, and maybe I want to go charge it, add an expense. But it hasn't been selected to export the invoice yet because I didn't check the box, but now I can. So my main point is here is that you may not always necessarily be sending to the invoice module the events that you've got. So I'm going to invoice those selected items. Actually, I'm going to clear my filter. So now I've got a bunch of things that aren't selected. I'm going to invoice selected items and send that out to a final invoice. That's going to drop me off, excuse me, in the invoice module with just those items selected, invoiced. So we can see now that we've kind of branched this data off from the project. So let's look at invoice reporting since we're here. This interface is a little bit different. If I want to print just this invoice, I do that from here. You probably know that. If I do send by email, it's going to create a PDF of this invoice. But let's go look at reports. So there are two, I should mention that. There are two invoice printouts. Customers have requested, we have this one weird customer that that insists that we format the invoice a different way. So you can do that. There's two invoice layouts available to you, and you can edit them to look how you like. And when I go to a list, that's going to show us the buttons that are available to specify. Maybe I want to do the found set, or I want to search for unpaid ones or within a date range of this year or this week, something like that. And of course, you can edit these as needed, just like that. And when I do week, I should point out that some places Sunday is the first day of the week. Other days Monday is the first day of the week. So the week button will change depending on what your selection there is. So there it's picking the 18th. If I go Sunday, it's picking the 17th as the week. Or I could only do items within that have a credit balance. Or I could pick which of my internal companies. Maybe I only want to do a list of invoices that have a credit balance with my internal company of Planet Perfect Post. And then maybe I want to subtotal it by client, something like that. So that would be kind of a neat report to do. So let's see if we end up with anything there. I bet there isn't any. Yep, only ABC Television. How about that? They never pay their bill. That's a joke. I'm just kidding. So maybe an aging report. Obviously, we want credit balances on there, or maybe I'll turn that off. Just show me things that are unpaid. I'm going to open that up to all of my companies and print report. So you can see there's kind of an interaction between all these buttons. It essentially flows from left to right. So pick the kind of report you want, pick what it should contain. Sometimes if we are specifying a date, we have to determine whether the dates that we're narrowing down to are based on the date of the invoice, the due date, or the line item date. That's always awkward if you've got line items from this month that show up on an invoice next month. Where should that be? So this lets you get total control over that. Maybe you want a client specific report. Pick your client. Let's say Elizabeth Alexander is now going to be the only client that's involved with this one. Category item reports. I'm going to turn this off, turn that off. Let's pick, I only want to see how do we do equipment wise on invoicing. And this will subtotal it by category. Let's see what that looks like. So there's equipment. There's all of my equipment, all of the uses of it. I should say it's a summary of all of the uses by it. It's not listing each usage. It's just summarizing each piece of equipment to see how much money we made from it. If I want to get it down to the item detail, I can do that as well. Oh, I need to pick an item. So equipment. I could put camera. Put that. So here's all of my items that contain the word camera. I think this red number is the invoice number that it's showing up on. I'm not certain. I used to know those things. Cancel that. And then there's also a commission report. So suppose that you have a salesperson and they get a commission based on that. Maybe I should just review that whole flow. I'm going to do that. Stand by. So if we go into contacts, I've got a client here, Charlie. I'm going to go into financial, and I'm going to say that whenever Charlie, the client, is comes with us, he has a default salesperson of Andre, the engineer. And I can go into Andre, the engineer. Actually, let me do this. Let's go to Alex. He's actually our sales guy. So if I go into Alex's record, just searched for Alex's record, and I'm going to go to his employee tab. I can see here what his commission percentage is. So let's give him a 10% commission. So that means that whenever that first client, Charlie, has a project, Alex is the salesperson. He gets a 10% commission. That's going to show up on the project. So here I'm in the project. I go to client info, financial, and the commission, let's say, is going to go to Alex. It's going to look up Alex's default commission, and this project wasn't Charlie the client, so that's why I had to manually set it to there. When we create an invoice from this project, that's going to flow out to the invoice module. It's going to inherit the salesperson of Alex, and it's not actually doing it, but trust me, it will. Popped in his default commission percentage, and then we can specify which line items are going to get commission, and we can do that by clicking on it. Actually, I think we have to shift click. Edit. Hold down shift click, and it's going to remind us that this has already been exported out to our accounting, so that might change it here, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. So I'm specifying that these two line items, by holding down shift, are going to get commission, and it's collecting up a total commission for this invoice based on the line items that are commissionable. And then if I go over to reports, I'm going to go a commission report, and I'm just going to open it up to everything, found set, and then I'm going to find all, and let's see what that report looks like. So here's all of my salespeople that have commission. There's that $240 for Alex that I just specified. So that's your commission report. And, well, let me go this. Suppose you don't like the look of that of an invoice, of our invoice printout. There's a button here, edit invoice printout. I just want to go how this works. I mentioned earlier that there were two invoice printouts, the regular and the alternate. So if I go to regular, it's going to take me to the layout that gets used for the printouts. And then I'm going to go into layout mode by pressing Command L or Control L on a PC, or one of these buttons, or down here. This is where the invoice prints from. From here, maybe you don't like the font that we used, which is Verdana. So I'm going to press Command A or Control A on a PC to select everything. From here, I can pick a different font. I'm not going to actually do it because that'll change my thing. Or let's say you want your company name only to be not bold. So I'm going to pick that and turn off bold. I may need to do that on my inspector here. Go to text. I'm going to turn off bold. So this is where you can go in and adjust the printout. I don't want to get into a whole layout lesson here, but this is where we can get to that layout. So I'm going to go back to browse by hitting exit layout. This dialog came up on my other screen, save changes. I'm going to hit don't save in this case, and return to print menu. So that's how you can get to those. I'll also mention that's a particular scripted button to get you to invoices because that's the most common thing that people want to edit in terms of the printout. But I'm in layout mode, and if I go to print, I can also navigate to them here as well. So if maybe I wanted to edit the client statements, which I haven't shown you yet, to include more or less information, this is how I would get there. So I'm going to use this to get back to where I was, invoice detail, exit layout. So one other report that I'm going to cover is the client statements. So I'm going to go to Sony Pictures. I want to find all open invoices for Sony Pictures. So I click this button, and this will bring us a statement report for Simon showing all of his unpaid invoices. And look, he's got a lot. So you would print this out, mail that off to Simon CAD to say, hey, pay us the money. I think that's about all I've got for you today. If you have any questions, I've answered the ones that came in so far. I'll kind of ramble for another minute or two to see if we can get any more questions. Library reports. So the main intent for these is labels, but a lot of people aren't even using physical media anymore. So maybe we just want to print out a list of all of the physical media that we do have in our library to have somebody come and get it because we don't want it anymore. So I'm going to print out this list. It's going to do my entire found set. And we could always do a search or some kind of query to get there first. But here is essentially a list of all of our media assets. And I think we've got it set up with 5 per page. So, if you had 100 pages, that'd be 500 sheets, 500 reels. It's got the barcode on there so you can scan it if need be. So that's an interesting report from library. We could also email that. So if I do this, it's going to create a PDF and mail it out. That's reports from library. And I think I got another question. And where can I find the other webinars you guys have recorded is a question somebody popped in. We are trying to get them cleaned up and edited on our site. They will be there eventually. Let me get up a new browser page here. So I'm just going to bring in our website here for a second. Ooh, that's big. So if you hit this webinars button, right now this is a schedule of the upcoming ones. Eventually, from this same page, we'll have a list of the existing ones. We're just slammed here at Ultramedia trying to get everybody set up and happy. So we haven't been able to finish getting them edited, but they will be here eventually. And with that, I think that's it. Stand by for an email of if we are doing a report. Next week, I again am out of town, so I'm not sure we'll get it, but hopefully we will. If not, perhaps I will see some of you in 2 weeks. Thank you so much for joining today, and I think you will get a follow-up email if you have some feedback. Please let me know. Thanks very much. Talk to y'all soon.